All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful essay by William L. Weaver called The Digital Enclosure. It lays out this fascinating and maybe kind of unsettling story of the internet. Let's get right into it.
I mean, does this feel familiar at all? That nagging sense that the open, kind of messy, wonderful web we used to know has been replaced by these shiny, polished, but privately owned spaces where you have to pay, either with your cash or your data, just to get seen or heard? Well, according to Weaver, that feeling you have is spot on. He argues this whole shift wasn't some random accident of evolution. Nope. It was a deliberate process, and it has a really powerful historical parallel. A full-scale digital enclosure.
To really get what he means by enclosure, we have to take a trip back in time, a few hundred years actually, to a moment that completely changed the English countryside forever. For generations, communities had something called common land. This was a shared resource, a system that basically sustained everyone. But then came the Enclosure Acts. Parliament started passing laws that let wealthy landowners just privatize this shared land. They literally built fences and stone walls around it. And this move, it completely upended society. It stripped peasants of their self-reliance, and it forced them into the cities to become wage laborers in the brand new factories. They went from being members of a community to just cogs in a machine.
And that brings us right to Weaver's central punch-in-the-gut claim. He argues that this exact same process, this fencing off of a public commons for private profit, is what we're all living through on the internet today.
And here is where the metaphor just clicks right into place. The common pastures from back then, that's the open web of the 90s and early 2000s. The stone walls and hedges they built, today those are API paywalls and closed platforms. And the peasants who were forced into factories? Well, we've become the data points, haven't we? Fueling this new digital economy.
So, let's just rewind for a second and remember what that digital common pasture actually looked like before all the fences went up.
The early web wasn't built on platforms. It was built on protocols. The best way to think about protocols is just shared rules of the road. No single company owns them. They're like the fundamental language of the internet that lets all these different systems talk to each other, totally freely.
And this illustrates the point perfectly. You've got SMTP for email, HTTP for websites, RSS for your news feeds. You didn't need to ask a CEO for permission to use any of this. A user on AOL could seamlessly email someone on a university mainframe. The power was out at the edges of the network, with us, the users, not locked away in the center. But then, well, the whole dynamic started to shift. We began moving, all of us, from that wide-open commons into these beautifully manicured but very privately owned walled gardens. And oh man, it happened fast. Remember? Setting up a personal blog was kind of complicated. Creating a Facebook profile was super simple. Fiddling with an RSS reader was for geeks. But scrolling a Twitter feed? That was addictive. The platforms gathered billions of us, and all our content and all our friendships, right inside their walls.
And this right here is the crucial point. We were all offered a trade. We gave up our control, we gave up our autonomy, and in exchange, we got convenience. And hey, for about a decade, it seemed like a pretty good deal.
But Weaver points out this one fascinating moment, this road not taken, the Google Plus experiment. When Google made people use their real names to comment on YouTube, something incredible happened. The anonymous, hateful trolling just dropped like a rock. Civility shot way up. But the community revolted. They demanded the right to be anonymous, and Google backed down. Weaver argues that in that moment, we, as a collective, chose a future of high engagement anonymity over one with potentially more civil, real conversations. So after that choice was made, with billions of us and all of our social connections captured inside these walls, the trap snapped shut. The enclosure was finalized.
Weaver compares this moment to a fictional directive from the novel Atlas Shrugged, where the people in power decide to just freeze the economy. No new inventions, no innovation, all to lock in their control. The platforms, he says, did the exact same thing.
First, they froze innovation. Platforms like Reddit and the company we used to call Twitter, they shut down their APIs. They killed off all those beloved third-party apps we used. Why? To force every single one of us into their single official experience, the one that serves the most ads. That was the end of an era of user-led innovation. Next, they throttled our reach. The organic, merit-based visibility that we all spent years building was just choked off. Now, if you want the network that you built to actually see your content, you often have to pay a tax. You have to pay for verification or for promotion. And finally, the ultimate enclosure. The decades of content we all created, our posts, our art, our conversations, is now being fenced off and used as the raw material to train proprietary AI models. And of course, it's often done without our consent and definitely without compensation.
So yeah, it sounds pretty grim, but Weaver's analysis doesn't just end there. He actually sees a surprising path forward, a way for us to start reclaiming the commons.
And here is the brilliant twist in his whole argument. For years, we've been forced to act like robots for the algorithm, right? Creating predictable, rage-bait stuff just to get a little engagement. Weaver argues AI is now here to do that robot's job for us, which frees us, the humans, from the digital factory floor. We can actually leave. And where do we go when we leave the factory? Well, we go back to the countryside. We're already fleeing the low-value noise of the algorithm for high-signal, more intimate spaces. We're retreating from the public feed to build new kinds of comments, in Signal chats, in Discord servers, and through direct newsletters.
So what can we actually do about it? Weaver calls it guerrilla gardening, reclaiming small patches of the open web for ourselves. Own your own domain. It's your own little piece of digital land. Use open protocols like email that no single company can ever control. And maybe most importantly, focus on building direct relationships with people, not just on feeding an algorithm.
And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. The tech giants, yeah, they may own the servers and the infrastructure, the physical fences of this new enclosure, but the relationships, the human connections that give this whole network its true value in the first place, they can only own those if we let them. That's a variable they can never, ever fully enclose.